President Trump has cited a little-used Emergency Act as justification for sweeping tariffs imposed on dozens of countries. That Emergency Act allows for tariffs when there's a threat to national security. But is the president's interpretation of the Emergency Act legal? Joining us now is attorney Robert McMurder. And Robert, you're kind of one of our go-to guys. We got a bunch of them, but you're one of them when it comes to the Constitution. Let's get to the legality. First of all, in general, in toto, President Trump's tariffs, are they legal?
No. No.
Thank you for joining us. That's all we got for you tonight. I mean, explain, please.
Well, okay, look, let's just go back to the owner's manual of the country, which is the United States Constitution, which says at Article 1, Section 8, powers of Congress, the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. Congress, not the president, has the power to tax and to impose tariffs. Now, they delegate that power in certain acts, like the International Emergency Imports Act, but this is well beyond anything they wanted to delegate in that act.
Well, let's talk about this International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The president says that this gives him the power to make major economic decisions in times of emergency, and we are in a time of emergency.
Well, but we're not in a time of emergency. There's no great emergency. This isn't the start of World War II. This isn't the start of anything even like the Great Depression. We are just not there. Now, he wants to say that we have an emergency because there's trade imbalances. Well, trade imbalances are not emergencies. I have a trade imbalance with my local supermarket. I buy a lot from them, but they buy nothing from me. That is not an emergency. That's business. And he's trying to justify this, and it just doesn't work.
But in a legal sense, who decides what an emergency is?
Well, usually it can be the president, but it has to be reviewed by Congress. And that act was actually intended to be a limitation on the power of the presidency, not an expansion of his powers. Now, of course, ultimately, this will go to the U.S. Supreme Court as it percolates through. And this is where you get a really interesting kind of split in the way the justices might come out on this.
Talk more about that, because why would that be an interesting split? Why would there be a split at all?
Well, the justices that generally are in favor of Trump, the most conservative justices, are also the justices who believe in the non-delegation doctrine, which means Congress should not be delegating their powers to the executive branch agencies. So they're the ones who ideologically are textualists and say that there should not be delegation because of that little clause I just read in the owner's manual, the Constitution. They would say that you shouldn't delegate this. This is a congressional power. So these are the ones who generally favor Donald Trump in their rulings, but they're going to be bumping up against their own doctrine when it comes to the non-delegation doctrine.
So when the administration says, if it's an unusual and extraordinary threat to the U.S., the president has the executive powers to investigate, regulate, or prohibit foreign transactions, you say, yeah, maybe, but Congress has to have oversight?
Congress has to have oversight. It is a delegative power, and the Supreme Court may even say that the delegation that Congress gave under that act was too far, and that's what they've done in other cases. Look, when you're talking about an emergency, you're talking about something like an attack on this country. Let's say Russia was to attack us, and then you create a tariff in opposition to a foreign adversary, like, let's say, Nazi Germany or some other country, although the act was in existence during World War II. But that's the kind of emergency we're talking about, not just a trade imbalance.
Okay, but again, is that what we're talking about, or is a tariff? Could a tariff in a time of steep trade imbalance, you call it an emergency, maybe not, but there is a trade situation going on against the United States, does a tariff then qualify as something for the executive to have control over?
No. A tariff is supposed to be passed by Congress unless they've given specific delegative authority to the president to impose it in certain circumstances. And again, the Supreme Court might even say that's wrong.
And it doesn't matter that the Congress in this case has no apparent, Republicans are in control here. They have no interest or stomach to go against President Trump right now.
Well, the trouble is they've advocated their role under the Constitution, which is supposed to be a check. The framers of the Constitution intended the branches to be checks on each other. The trouble is parties got in there, and so the parties in Congress aren't going to go against the party who's the president.
Now, the White House apparently wants one of these suits transferred to the Court of International Trade. What the heck is that?
Well, it was another court setup, and I think he thinks that's a better forum for him. This is an administration that likes to shop around for the best forums, and he thinks that that court, with his appointees, is going to be a little bit more favorable to him.
What, with all of these suits, everything that's flying around here, where does standing come in?
Well, that's very interesting because of the plaintiffs, including one of the Native American nations. The question is, who really has the right to wave their flag and say, I'm wronged here?
Yes.
There is an argument that would be a strong one for the Trump administration that, hey, no, wait, that constitutional provision I just wrote, it's for Congress to step up and not for any individual plaintiff to do it. And therefore, only Congress can be the check, not individual persons bringing a case to the courts.
Interesting. So you're basically saying Congress has a very big role to play in all this. They're not playing it,
Yeah.
but they have it.
They have it. That's what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay, if they don't do it, though, who else has standing?
Well, that will be the main question from the Trump administration. And what the people who are raising these cases are doing is they're saying, look, I have been economically hurt by this tariff in a way that is unfair and unconstitutional, and therefore I wish to go to the court and be heard. And the court may or may not hear their case. They may get knocked out on standing.
We just had a small business owner just last night talk about, and she was one of the first to file against the tariffs, specifically against the tariffs against China, because it's killing her business.
Yeah. Well, she can come in, and I have no doubt that it's killing her business, but she may not have standing under the Constitution, and that's where you would really get in the weeds, and we'd need like a three-hour talk on that one.
Well, let's stay out of the weeds here, but get back to the Supreme Court.
Right.
If the Supreme Court rules one way or the other, okay, that's a major ruling, isn't it?
Oh, yes. And it will also be in the context, again, I don't know if you remember, the Chevron doctrine was overturned by the court, which is the non-delegative doctrine. Again, it gives you an interesting direction where this court will go. If the very, very conservatives who wanted to overturn the Chevron doctrine, give less power to delegation, are true to their doctrine, their ideology, Donald Trump will lose on this issue. But if they are not true to that, then they're going to try to make it so that he wins on this issue, and that could show a real criticism of those particular justices.
And again, be a handicapper here. What do you think is going to happen?
I think on this one, the plaintiffs are going to be smart with their arguments. If they get to the merits, then I think Trump will lose. But I think there's a very good chance that Trump wins on standing.
All right, a last question here. And we only got a minute left, so you only got a minute for this
Okay.
one small question. What if Trump loses and says, who's going to stop me?
Well, that is either a constitutional crisis or we are a continuation of a constitutional crisis. And that means we have to have midterm elections and see what happens with that. Generally, when presidents have defied the court in that way, it hasn't gone well for presidents.
But if it does go well at the ballot box, who's going to stop him?
Nobody.
All right, Robert McWhirter, attorney, constitutional expert. Good to have you here. Good conversation as always. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.